Science Uncut, presented by the Volkswagen Foundation.
Ethnological museums in the 21st century have to embrace their influence on society not only thanks to a thorough knowledge of their collection, but also by amplifying their civic discourse, accelerating the cultural and social change, and contributing to the contextual intelligence. Or, as Gail Lord and Geir Blankenberg call it, by using the soft power. So, this is the museum as you see it, as it opens 8 months ago in November 2014. But the museum history, it's way longer. Actually, the Musée d'Ethnographie de Genève was created in 1901, but created does not mean it popped up out of nothing, decided one random day and filled with objects that arrived there without any past in Geneva. Part of the collection lived through a long history made up of redistribution from other museums. Part of our collection comes from the Archaeological Museum, from the Public Library, and so on. But also a process of redefinition of heritage, which, as such, talks of Geneva and its relation to the world. So, that being said, for the MEC, the question was not whether we had to display the history of our collection and the provenance, but how. Indeed, when going through the rooms of a refurbished ethnological museum, we need to remember that we must be prudent of ideas of progress, including those about the route which led from trophy brought back from the first voyages of exploration to collecting undertaken in the name of science. So the how is very important. So to overcome this, the MEC opted for 3 perspectives. To address these questions for its permanent exhibition, we opted for a prologue, an introductory part. Then the exhibition itself, the scenography, tells us a lot about the history of our collection. And also, finally, the exhibition labels. So the prologue. So this is the introductory part of the permanent exhibition entitled The Archive of Human Diversity. So the MEC has chosen to display in its permanent collection a prologue to show a twofold history, the one of the institution and that of the provenance of the objects. This double perspective helps us understand the different ways of looking at alterity through our collections. The objects of our collection and those displayed in this introductory part allows us to address different yet important issues underpinning our history. So here all the objects were collected in different contexts, historical contexts, or for different purposes. And in this prologue, we address the following questions. So this is another picture. So this is the part where I might speed up. I won't get in details of all these themes. I'm just going to give some examples on how we're dealing with that. And, but just in order to give you a flavor of how we're managing to deal with our history and the provenance. So a set of objects were collected in a period of what we call now the ethnographic objects. The first what we call ethnographic objects entered the Geneva collection in the 18th century at a turning point in history. Around 1750, the ambition to construct scientific knowledge of the world competed with curiosity about strangeness. Voyages of exploration, maritime trade, evangelization, and colonization facilitated the acquisition of souvenirs, trophies, and collections. This is just an example, but there are a couple of other objects that were collected in the same context. Other objects were collected in the perspective of establishing a hierarchy of mankind. In the early 19th century, societies judged rudimentary lost the virtuous image that Jean Doléry, Montaigne, and Rousseau had given them. The ideology of progress labeled these others as primitive. Science supported European domination of the world, contradicting the equality of all men decreed in the rush of revolutionary enthusiasm. The picturesque aspect of folklore and exotism provide the features that distinguish us from them. In the late 19th century, the vogue for identity could be seen in Geneva's antique shops and at the Swiss National Exhibition in 1896. As you know, triumphant display of Western modernity, the universal or national exhibitions of the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries were concerned with both ideas of identity and economic issues. They celebrated the productive capacity of the dominant power and the legitimacy of colonization. Objects of our collection from this period come mainly from Geneva's antique shop, the National Exhibition in 1896, the Primitive Art Market, and the colonial network of the Ethnography Museum. So there are other topics I won't get in detail, but just to remind the issues that we are treating in this part. Then we have the scenography itself. The general display of the exhibition itself tells us a lot about the history of our collection and the provenance of the objects. Along with the prologue, the exhibition is divided in 6 different areas, one for the ethnomusicology and one for a different continent, including Europe. The scenography is, we compare to our compactus that you just open and you enter in different civilizations, sorry. But we have Europe, and that is important. We display our European collection, part of our European collection. And this is important because when the MEG includes Europe in world cultures, it breaks the harsh division between us and them, reframing the conversation so that we are all simultaneously us and them and everything in between. The way the objects were chosen and displayed is not representative of the human production through the years and continents. Rather, it reflects not only the aspect introduced in the prologue, but also the fact that every collection is consistent with the interests of donors, prior curators, and trends. For example, the Asia collection is very strong on religious issues, while Europe is very much concerned on popular art. In 1976, the MEG purchased the collection of Georges Amodru, an eminent collector of alpine objects, giving a geographical consistency to MEG's collection. So here you see part of this. This is the European part. Then we have the labels, the exhibition labels. A tremendous research work has been performed in order to collect the information and document the collection. The result of this can be appreciated in the labels, where information is not only provided about the context of acquisition, but also the context in which the artifact was collected in the field, and even the creator. So when we have the name of the artist, of the creator, we put it in the labels in the exhibitions. By linking the object to the collector and the artist, we are today able to emphasize a relationship that was lost. If you take the example of the African department, this information helps us understand this collection was not born out of a unique view of African art, nor were the objects collected in a systematic and methodical way. Rather, the MEG's African collection is the fruit of the passionate enthusiasm of travelers, explorers, and missionaries. So here you see the painting with other paintings from the same artist in the African department. In turn, knowing this detailed information contributes to connect with our general audience. For example, the curator of the African department, Florian Morin, held a conference on the origins of the African collection, and the audience was crowded of grandsons and granddaughters of missionaries. So, by displaying this information and making it accessible to the widest audience as possible, the MEG intends to achieve a level of transparency that contributes to the understanding of why these objects have reached a public collection in Geneva, who participate in the enrichment, and what was the context. And this is where I'm hitting now, the general audience. Indeed, what would be an exhibition without an audience willing to gain valuable knowledge and therefore a better understanding of our society? In that sense, the MEG tries to be groundbreaking in terms of social engagement. As such, the MEG addresses in an inclusive way many different audiences, including disabled people, diasporas. For information, there are 182 nationalities in Geneva, so it's a very cosmopolitan city. Overlooked communities and invisible minorities. By empowering these audiences through programs that are tailored to them, the MEG becomes a key player in terms of social sustainability. Working with disregarded group or invisible minorities does not imply that they need to be partitioned from other audiences, quite the contrary. For example, we do not provide activities for persons with disabilities, but we work with them in order to implement activities that are tailored for everyone. An experimental program has been successfully carried out for illegal immigrants with the participation of social cultural players. This program aims at making the MEG a primary factor in the social integration process. And that's important, and that reached the discussion of yesterday about ethics and moral duty of a museum. And for us, it's not because the government don't want to deal with illegal immigrants that we don't have a social role to play in that field. Actually, the illegal immigrants are quite happy to have this program that be included in the reflection. The MEC has also been working with various diasporas installed in the vicinity of Geneva in order to promote their living traditions and intangible heritage. These events are related to the culture represented in our exhibitions, allowing a better understanding while becoming a place of cultural interaction between people from different areas. I'm about to finish, but just want to have an example. I tell you a history. I should have started with the history. Every year, over 300 indigenous representatives come to Geneva for the United Nations Forum on Indigenous Issues. So I decided to meet some of them in order to, I don't know, give them public exposure, and not just because they spent 1 week in the United Nations trying to fight for the rights. And I wanted to see whether we could help them, whether we could be a forum for them. But they were very reluctant for that. I think they were afraid to be exotized or be objectified, I don't know. And not all of them accepted to share the experience with us. She accepted. She's an Amazigh from Algeria, and she wanted to perform the Anza rite with the kids and families in the museum. But my point is that they asked me how we can help them in order to preserve the heritage back in their countries. They say, okay, we're losing our objects. Our kids are going to those cities. They're attracted by the lifestyle in Europe. Forced migration, we cannot take our objects with us. So please help us with that. So we organized very quickly a crash course in order to give them the basic aspects of heritage preservation. My point is not whether we did good or bad. I mean, doing the Western standards for preservation is not necessarily the good way. My point is, and that joined the question of yesterday about the redistribution of power. I mean, my point is we should not only work with source communities in order to gain valuable knowledge about our collections or a better understanding of our exhibitions, but we should also have a social impact with these communities without expecting anything from them. So as a conclusion, in highly competitive, fast-changing cities, ethnological museums in the 21st century can be an important resource for social development and cultural change by using their potential to influence through attraction. This can be reached by many different and complementary ways, including creating contextual intelligence, social inclusion, or as being a cultural accelerator. The collection and the information we gather about it is crucial in this process. By making spaces for new perspective, encouraging contextual ideas, and by making information accessible, ethnological museums will easily face the 21st century challenges. Thank you very much. I'm out of time.